right, let me let everyone in. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. There. Could I just ask everyone to please just pop themselves on mute? Thank you very much. All right, let me let a couple of more people in. Afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. All right, okay, so I'm just going to kick off and I will let everyone in as they appear. So good afternoon and welcome to everyone to what is our fourth Lunch and Learn this week with our pure cancer researcher, Dr. Jana Janaththani. Welcome to our committee members. I see a couple of board members there, as well as the team and our observers. Great to have you here. Just a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. The session will be 45 minutes. If you want to ask questions, please pop them in the chat box below, direct that to me and I will weave those into the conversation as well. Please just make sure that you're on mute as well. That'd be very helpful. And we'll kick off. All right. So this week we're talking to Dr. Jana, as I said. She is currently working as a senior research officer at the Florey Institute of Neuroscience and Mental Health. And we are funding her for her prostate cancer research. So prostate cancer is one of the most common types of cancer for men. Research says that essentially 1 in 6 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer by the age of 85. This is the first time we have funded Jana, so welcome. Great to have you part of the Cure Cancer family and the alumni. And the grant is funded by the Denton Family Trust through the Priority-Driven Collaborative Cancer Research Scheme as well. So welcome, Jana. Before we talk about your research, do you want to just give a little bit of a background about yourself and why you got into cancer research?
Yeah. Thanks, Nikki. So my name is Janaththani. I'm originally from Sri Lanka. So I did my undergrad honors degree in molecular biology and biotechnology in Sri Lanka. As you may already know, Sri Lanka is mostly agricultural based country. So for my undergrad degree, I was doing some agricultural based research, not related to cancer at the moment at that stage. But when I was doing my undergrad, one of my close friends' brother passed away due to acute leukemia. So that's when I became interested in cancer. Then I applied for PhD. I applied for scholarship in Australia. So I was trying mainly for leukemia at that stage, but I couldn't secure funding. So I got a scholarship to continue my studies in prostate cancer. So I did my PhD in Queensland University of Technology, and it then worked at the same lab as a research assistant and postdoc for a while. And then we moved to Melbourne because I have my family here, my siblings, and currently working in completely different area as well, in epilepsy at the Florey Institute of Neuroscience and Mental Health. But I also still work with my previous supervisor on the prostate cancer research, which I have been funded through Cancer Australia and Cure Cancer.
Wow, that's quite a journey. So from agriculture to leukemia to prostate cancer to mental health.
Yeah.
So how does, obviously within Sri Lanka, you know, there's some challenges about resourcing and further studies as well. So how did you become fortunate enough to move to Australia and continue your studies here?
So in Sri Lanka, actually, the education is free. I'm not sure whether you are aware of it. So up to undergrad, it's a free education. of course, we had to have a particular score to pass on to that level. Um, but for the higher studies, most of the students go abroad. So I was considering both USA and Australia, but like from a lot of people, I heard Australia is good for living. So that's why I decided. So so we have to write to different supervisors to see whether they have any project that they are willing to take me in, and that's how I got into this. Yeah.
So let's just talk about your pathway in cancer. So you said you were initially interested in leukemia, but you couldn't get funding for that, so you ended up in prostate cancer.
Yeah.
So can you talk to the audience a bit more about that journey there?
So I started my PhD project in prostate cancer as part of Australian Prostate Cancer Research Centre, Queensland. So it's a big group where we have lots of researchers, clinicians, and also sometimes we get patients as well. So while I was doing it, I think I became more interested in that, and I really want to make a difference. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so let's just start talking about your prostate cancer work. So obviously, as I said in my introduction, prostate cancer is one of the most forefront cancers for men. So in layman's terms, as much as possible, can you start to talk about your work and what you're looking at from a research?
Yeah. So my supervisors were part of a large genetic association studies consortium, like it's a worldwide consortium including different countries. So because of that, they were able to acquire data from 50,000 cases and 30,000 controls for the genetic information. So from that detailed analysis, they found a region in chromosome 5 has association with prostate cancer. So my PhD project was to see how it is involved in prostate cancer progression. So I was looking at 2 genes, and I found that one of the genes may have a role in hormone signaling. So hormone resistance is the aggressive form of prostate cancer. So when patients get prostate cancer, they get androgen hormone deprivation therapy. But with time, some patients acquire resistance to that treatment and then progress to an aggressive form of cancer. For them, mostly 5-year survival rate is around 20%. So that's the focus of this study, to see whether the genes which I'm working on has a role in that aggressive prostate cancer.
Okay, great. So what percentage of patients get the resistance to the current drugs that undergo prostate?
So when the cancer is localized, the survival is really good, around 95%. But when in 5%, they start getting progression, and within that 5%, the survival rate is really low afterwards.
Okay, and then for those unfortunate people that do have the cancer spread, is there a common secondary form of cancer it goes to, or can that range individual to individual?
So now there is not personalized medicine. So it's normal chemotherapeutic drugs on the line. So that's what we were trying to see with the genetic association studies. Maybe we can progress to personalized medicine, where like if some patients have some mutations or germline variants, whether they can be treated differently and will get better outcome.
Great. Okay, so you're looking at those 2 genes, and then one of those genes has shown that it's signaling. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then what do you do? So you've got these 5% of patients where cancer has gone elsewhere. They've got this gene or hormone that is signaling. What's the next step then on your research?
So I still want to understand the biology. Like for that, I'll be mostly doing the lab-based experiments from the cell lines derived from prostate cancer patients, and also I'm planning to do some animal work using mouse models.
Yeah.
So it's not at the stage to go to a clinical trial or something like that. It's still in the beginning stages, but I have to see how it goes. Yeah.
Great. So you've identified the signal, then you have to do some trials on
Yeah.
mouse models,
Yeah.
and then look at using some form of personalized treatment if
Yeah.
possible
Yeah.
for these patients. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for those patients that are currently going under treatment, you said it's chemotherapy. How effective is chemotherapy for those 5% of patients?
It's not very effective, I would say, for them. Like that's why I say for majority of them, like 5 years survival rate is it's very low. Like only 20% has a more than 5 year survival rate.
Okay. Thank you. So you talk very much about you need to test this. So are you with the testing using existing drugs that are available on the PBS, or are you looking at developing a combination of new drugs?
Now, I don't think any drugs against this gene or protein is available.
Yep.
So we were thinking of small molecules, like small sequence against the mRNA of this gene at one stage, but we haven't progressed. Like we were looking for more funding to continue with that study. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. So it's a work in progress, shall we
Yeah.
say? Right.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So this work that we're funding for you this year, it's a year-long project. So within the scope, can you talk about, obviously you want to test on mice models, but can you just talk about what you want to achieve over this year worth of funding?
So I think so aim one of my proposal is to actually understand the role of this gene, because it's also a gene which is involved in normal developmental process. So we don't want to do something which will also have effect not only in cancer, also in normal cells. That's why we are doing that step to see what it is actually doing once in the normal physiological conditions as well. And then only we will move into mouse models.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Now I have a question here about prostate cancer, and I don't know the answer to this actually. So is it hereditary, or is it a genetic development that you find?
There is a hereditary component as well. Like if there is first degree relatives, or second degree relatives, there is a high chance of getting prostate cancer. But then there are also other environmental factors as well.
Okay. And what examples of environmental factors would there be?
There were like some chemicals. I can't remember from top of my head, but also smoking, just lifestyle.
Okay, that leaves you a bit predisposed. Another question we have here is that, and I don't know if this is true, but it's common belief that the older that you are, the more likely you are to get prostate cancer. Is that the case?
Yes, it is, because I think it's the normal function of like it's I don't know exactly what's the reason, but it's also with the age it increases. But then also there is the prostate specific antigen, or PSA, is the normal biomarker for prostate cancer, which is also increased with age. So there is also sometimes misdiagnosis, and patients have, or people have to go through biopsies and other stuff for further confirmation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Talking your research about looking at more personalized treatment for these group of patients, we've talked before about, with the other researchers, about the side effects, and also in some cases over treatment. Do you have the same difficulties and challenges with prostate cancer as well?
Yeah, obviously, as I was saying, the PSA test. The problem of prostate cancer is 95% of patients just have the localized tumor, so they don't need any harsh treatments. But we don't know which patient exactly will have localized tumor, or in future they will progress to aggressive disease. So in most of the cases, even when they were diagnosed at localized tumor stage, they undergo this chemotherapy, androgen deprivation therapy, which affects quality of life, and also the economy of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important to remember as well, isn't it? Because chemotherapy is only widely available in certain countries. We've talked before in the last few weeks with the different cancer researchers about immunotherapy and chemotherapy having a positive reaction together. Have you done any studies on the whole immunotherapy piece at all?
No, I don't, but I think it's still in the early stages. There are a lot of, it's like an immunotherapy era now, like a lot of immunotherapy studies are going on currently at the moment, and it looks promising.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. So then you're talking about wanting to understand the markers and the readings of patients so you can give them better, more personalized treatment. Could you just explain to the audience here what those markers are and how you can use them to personalize that?
So the genetic variants, which are like single nucleotide polymorphism, it's like one base pair change in the genomic sequence. So that's the marker which has been used to identify this region in chromosome 5.
Yeah.
So it's not an inherited mutation, like it's not a mutation which happens later in life, it's actually inherited one. So that's why the hereditary factor is coming here as well.
That's great, thank you. So one of the questions we have, and we often ask, is how can your work or your studies, and granted you're at the beginning of this, but how can they be rolled across and potentially be helped to other forms of cancer? Is that the possibility with the work that you're doing?
It can be, because the gene I'm working is affecting the hormone signaling. So we hypothesize it might also have effect on other hormone-dependent cancers like breast cancer, endometrial, ovarian.
Okay, that's really interesting, because we've got a uterine cancer expert coming on in a couple of weeks as well. So I'll ask him the question too. So basically, cancers that are reliant on hormones and get that grow with the growth of hormones as well. Okay, very interesting. Thank you. And the work you're doing on prostate cancer, we talk about the impact globally. Are there other teams that you work with around the world or within Australia that are doing similar types of work as you are?
I don't think so, but like as I was saying, since my supervisor is part of that larger consortium, consortium, so so it's not only the region in chromosome 5, there are other 100 regions, more than 100 regions identified in prostate cancer. So it's like different groups across the world is working on different regions in chromosome.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're unique. What you're doing here is actually unique.
Yeah, for this, yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. There was a study before in Japanese population, but I don't think they are continuing with it.
Okay. And that actually touches on a question we asked last week as well. Do you find that prostate cancer mutates differently across different genetic makeups? So would one type of race be more predisposed to that type of cancer?
Yeah, there are some specific mutations or genetic variants in specific ethnicities. The one I'm working is multi-ethnic genetic variant.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a few. Yeah, it's like more. So prostate cancer is more prominent in African American ancestry, I think. So they have separate genetic predisposition. So this, yeah.
Oh, really? So the African
Oh,
race has more likely to get prostate cancer than
yeah.
others. Wow. Okay. Didn't know that. Thank you for sharing. So when you say you're focusing on multi-ethnic areas, what does that mean that you're dealing with different races or people that have multiple genetics from races themselves?
People from multiple ethnicities, like different ethnicities. So the samples were collected from different regions in the world. Like
Yes.
they have, yeah.
That's really interesting. And have you found anything that to speak of at the moment about that? Obviously, you talk about the African race being more predisposed, but within the other ethnicities, have you found any traits that from cancer development within their genes?
Not really. So the region I'm currently working on was initially identified in Japanese population.
Yeah.
So they initially thought because it was not reported in Caucasian, so it could be an ethnic specific one. That's why so this consortium and my supervisor, they repeated this locus again, and they found that this is also associated in Caucasian men. And then there were a few studies later on looking in different populations like Chinese, Iranian.
That's really interesting. Lovely, thank you. So as you work through this research, you talk about personalized medicine, which I think is most cancer researchers hope too. But you're doing this research now for the next year. Where do you want that to end up? Are you planning to continue down this vein of research over the next few years?
Yes, of course. At least like after identifying its biological role in cancer, I think we will be doing my studies, and if it really works, of course, we would like to target using small molecules and see what happens. Yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So I've got a question a bit off topic, but someone's asked, why are you looking at mental health now, and why why have you moved or flipped over from? You're still doing cancer research, but why are you doing secondary research?
So as I was saying, we decided, like my husband and I decided to move to Melbourne, and he came before me. He found a job, and I was applying for jobs from Brisbane. So obviously, I was applying mostly for cancer research. But this one, I found it interesting because it's commercially funded project. So I really wanted to get that feel how it works, because I was completely in academic setting all this time. So I wanted to see, I wanted to have this exposure. Yeah.
So, I mean, that really touches on why we do what we do, because obviously we know cancer research, particularly for early career researchers, is underfunded.
Yeah.
So could you just talk a bit about that and those challenges and what this funding means for you?
So I think I almost applied for 7 different grants last year and year before that. So it's becoming really hard. Like also it depends on how much publication the investigator has, which is sometimes hard based on their project. For some projects, it might be easy to get publications, like they can have short stories to get it published. Mine was a bit bigger, like we were trying to include more and more data, so it was getting delayed. So with lack of that first author publication, I was having a hard time, and it's already like very few opportunities, like it's only I think 4%, 5% success rate with the grads.
Mm.
So it was, and it's a bit tricky too, because like I applied for DOD prostate cancer program once, and my application was scored in excellent category, but then I wasn't still funded because they only fund outstanding category.
Oh.
So it's like it's a bit tricky, and it's disappointing. It's stressful sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, what your experience talks exactly to why we're doing what we're doing, you know, and you are a example of the fact that you've moved to something that's commercially funded because you can get funding, whereas, you know, you're applying for 7 grants and then you have excellent, but because you're not outstanding, you're not getting funding, which is exactly the challenge we're working to at the moment. So your hope for the future is to continue in cancer research, should you get the funding, or do you think that you'd prefer to continue down this commercial brain focus in mental health?
I think I would prefer to move back to cancer. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Thank you. So a couple of questions, and just to let the audience know that if they've got any other questions, please send them over to me now. You know, what's your hope for the future within prostate cancer research? Where in your career do you want to see this end up?
I would like to find a cure for these patients, and also I think it's also important to work on diagnosing the patient early at the stage who will be progressing to the aggressive disease and who will just have the localized disease.
Yes. Okay, lovely. And we have a question here about the symptoms. So are there any obvious symptoms to the individual or that they can detect, or is it really from a going to the doctor and doing the analysis there?
There is some symptoms like pain, and which I think even if we put our normal headache and everything in Google, it points out to cancer these days. But the common test is like PSA test. So I think from 45 now, men are recommended to do routine PSA test so that they can diagnose the cancer early at the early stage where it can be treatable.
Yes. Okay, lovely. All right. Well, I'll make a note of that. So for 45 years onwards,
I have to make sure, because it was 40 before, but I think it's also giving a lot of false positives.
Yes.
So they made it a bit later. Yeah.
Move it back.
I have to check it, whether it's 45 or 50.
Yeah. No problem. Thank you. And then for our audience, I mean, as I said, we've got our committee members here and our board members, as well as our staff. What support can we give you?
Good question. So the support you have already given me is like really important in my career, because this is my first grant. And I was also, so I had a feeling if I'm not getting any early career fellowships or anything within my first 3-year post PhD, it's going to be hard to establish myself as an independent researcher in future. Because there are at least some like your cancer, there are some funding specifically targeted for ECRs. Once we pass that time, we have to compete with the whole pool, like very well established researchers as well. So getting this was really an important thing in my career. And I look forward working with you. It's going to be a bit tricky, like since I am physically in Melbourne, but my work has to be done in Brisbane because I don't have a prostate cancer lab here. So, but I have a current PhD student who will be finishing soon. So she was the one planning to continue on this work in the lab.
Yes, I think when I first spoke to you about getting the funding, you were still in Brisbane, and you said
Yeah.
you were going to Melbourne. So,
Yeah.
so they're going to continue that research
Yeah,
piece
yeah.
for you with the funding.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, lovely. All right. Well, look, thank you very much for your time. It's great to have you here. As I said, welcome to the Cure Cancer family.
Thank you.
And then just to recap on what you've talked about. So essentially, for those that have locally based prostate cancer, there's a 95% survival rate, which is great. It's really about those 5% that that don't. And you're looking at two genes, one that's hormone signaling, and looking at how we may be able to put together some form of personalized treatment for those patients, based on your testing now, and then obviously on the mice models in the future as well. What's really interesting was that you touched on how different ethnic groups also have different resistance and different probabilities of getting prostate cancer. And from a diagnosis or prognosis perspective, people should really look at doing their tests, 45 plus or 50 to be determined as well. And you know, most importantly to me, you know, you're touching on how the fact that you're now doing a different type of cancer research. Sorry, different type of research, because you can't get funding. You know, that really brings it home. What we do is so important. So we will keep doing what we're doing, and you don't stop.
Yeah, thank you.
You're on one of the projects that's not being done anywhere else in the world. We really do appreciate that, and we wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to everyone else that has joined us today. Next week, which is the 6th of April, we will be talking to Dr. Sandra Brosner, also one of our new members. And she's a bioinformatician, and she'll be talking about her work on esophageal cancer as well. So thank you, everyone. Lovely to chat to you, Jana. And catch everyone next week.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, bye-bye.